Everyone, welcome into the Striker MLS podcast. I missed you guys last week. My name is Jon Arnold. I wasn't here last week. I'm back in beautiful Dallas, Texas. We're going to break down all three of the MLS matches last night involving teams from the Lone Star State and also look ahead to the next weekend as these teams are nearly there, boys. They're nearly to that international break. It's kind of interesting because I thought that, the Houston Dynamo were going to be the team that was needing it the most. And Victor Araiza, you're chilling out in sunny LA, and that might not be the case anymore. They might say, no, we want to keep playing games because last night the Dynamo smoked the LA Galaxy 3-0. Austin FC drew in Q2 2-2 with Orlando City in a wild game. And FC Dallas was maybe the most boring game of the night, but plenty to talk about there as well with their first home loss of the season, losing 2-1 to Minnesota United. It's also the first time this year they've had consecutive defeats after that loss to the Vancouver Whitecaps midweek. But let's start in LA where Victor Araiza, if you can't see it on the video, we are on YouTube and we do stream this live at 10 a.m. every Monday, 10 a.m. Central Time. Victor is poolside. He's really bringing the LA vibe. And look, why not have a little glow when the team you wrote about, the team you interview, the team you have to deal with after games won 3-0? Victor, what happened? It went right.
Yeah, first of all, good morning to you guys. Look, it may still be a little cloudy here, but it ain't cloudy for the Houston Dynamo. It was a good win out here, a good trip. 3 points is exactly what the doctor ordered, and it wasn't out of the question or hard to predict. It was just, can this team go out and execute it, right? We talked about if they expose the weaknesses. Well, I mean, it's there on the StrikerTexas.com pre-match preview. If they expose the weaknesses, if they can manage the midfield with Matias Vera expected to come back, which he did, and obviously Alberto Carrasquilla being out, this could have been a manageable, at least a draw and potentially a win, depending on how it played out. The starting lineups helped. I think having guys like Chicharito and Douglas Costa on the bench for LA set it up nicely. And look, the other one is Sebastian Ferreira is a big time player, right? One goal, two assists last night. If he's allowed to play or allowed to thrive, then he's gonna succeed. And part of it is he's last night a good clean up goal. He called it a goal scorer's goal, and that set up the night for the rest of them.
Tell us more about Ferreira because, I would say, to be honest, Victor, you've been a bit harsh on him during the year. Now, justifying it with the fact that he's the big signing, right? But it seems like maybe that adaptation period is coming. And not only did we see him score a goal last night, you mentioned the assist. If you look at the stats, he created more chances than anyone else. He had more key passes than anyone else. He got into the box more than anyone else. He dribbled more than anyone else. He hit the woodwork a couple times. Like, this guy was feeling himself in a role that seemed to encompass more than what we've seen him play, which is sort of that traditional, hey, you're the 9, go score goals. Does bringing him into the attack more make him more comfortable? Is that what was missing?
Yeah, that would hit it on the head, bringing him more into the attack. I mean, that was the key. It wasn't. I think any criticism, I might have had it's more towards how is the team going to help him succeed. I think, maybe part of this was kind of setting the cart before the horse. You go and you get a bona fide number 9, but are you going to put forward the distribution, the game out wide, right? The support for him to succeed. There's some games you can point to, and the numbers speak for themselves, where he had very little opportunities. I think that game against Austin is the perfect example, right? He had that tremendous goal, and you only find him into the box one more time after that. And that's been the problem with him. It has nothing to do with confidence. It has nothing to do with his talent. If anything, the kid oozes with confidence. I mean, he wants to score. He's talked about the high expectations, but can Houston find him inside the box, or otherwise he's going to have to find those opportunities himself, which is essentially what he did last night, right? Positioned himself well in front of goal, cleaned up for a shot that Corey Baird, went right at Jonathan Bond, and then Ferreira just, lobs it over, puts it in the back of the net, cool, calm, collected. The other two, I mean, again, assisted Tyler Pasher. That was a bit more on of a Tyler Pasher goal, but Ferreira obviously sets him up. Pasher finds a bit of the open space, which has been another problem I've identified with the team, that they don't exploit those open spaces in some of these games. And the last one, I mean, gets a bit of space in the middle of the field, right? Evades the defender and then just sets off the rookie Thoro Farson. So this one's a big one on Ferreira, and especially because, again, no Carrasquilla, no Quintero, no Fafa Pico, and this Dynamo team got all 3 points.
Yeah, I wanted to ask as well about the midfield because you mentioned no Coco Carrasquilla, who is, I believe, serving the red card suspension. And obviously,
Yeah,
everyone's waiting for Hector Herrera to come to town, which will happen in a few weeks now, maybe a month or a month and a half, something like that. But that's going to look totally different. And yet, I felt like Matias Vera, after a pretty rough start to the year, Darwin Seren really stepped in well. Seren showed some of his experience, and the fact that the Galaxy, sure, they didn't start Chicharito, they didn't start Kevin Cabral, which now some Galaxy fans will say that's a plus. They didn't start Douglas Costa, but those guys come in and play a half hour where the Galaxy, I feel like, are confidently kind of like trying to chase that game. I guess it was kind of sandwiched between the two Houston goals that kind of killed off the game. At 2-0, I think they start to make the changes. But even so, defensively, the Dynamo did some things in this game that also were different from what we saw in that home loss to Austin FC, in that loss here in FC Dallas where they collapsed late. It seems like there are progressions there too.
Yeah. Obviously, just to add to it, that the Patrick goal gets scored right before those substitutions, so that's timing couldn't have been better. But yeah, I mean, I think before we move on from this game, I do think there are two things that we can't gloss over. Right? You mentioned it. Defensively, Steve Clark has been a great addition for this team. I think the salaries came out, and we'll obviously have a deeper breakdown here this coming week and on the Striker Texas on Houston Dynamo side of things. But Steve Clark's paid essentially around the same range as Marco Maric, but what you're getting is a completely different player, an MLS veteran. I mean, and plus not wasting an international spot, right? This is exactly the type of guy you needed. He's made all the difference, and make no question about it. As much as the offensive guy shined last night, this win is not possible without Steve Clark. It was 6 saves, a season high 6 saves. He kept the team in the game long enough for them to be able to get 3 points. And Paulo Nagamura deserves credit, right? I mean, I think some of these losses, and I've mentioned it again, strikertexas.com, the proof is all there. If they just get some of the points that they had lost at home, right? You add those up, they could very well be in first place in the Western Conference. A lot of these things are the way the team has been set up, tactical decisions, which is normal under a new coach in a different year, right? But I mean, here it is now starting to kind of turn a little bit. The decisions last night, I think they did exploit a Galaxy team that has weaknesses. They exploited those weaknesses, and to me, that was the question because we hadn't seen them executed, right? So overall, I think Nagamura deserves credit as well. It's an important week for him, right? I mean, this is a tough 3-game road stretch, I think, make or break. It starts in LA, where Paulo Nagamura started his MLS playing career, right? Midweek at Kansas City, we know the story there. And he started his coaching career, and then finishes at Real Salt Lake, which Paulo Mastroeni rumored to be maybe one of the candidates that Dynamo were looking after. Well, Paulo Nagamura has a chance to say this is why I was the right choice.
Yeah, I think it's certainly an impressive win from Houston. I know the Galaxy are not exactly in a good way. FC Dallas, I think, put a little bit of the blueprint there with their 3-1 win in Carson just a week before. But ultimately, I think this is a great result for the
Texas
Dynamo.
team's getting the best of LA teams.
I was just saying, what is it with the California Sunshine? Texas teams go out there. I think they're undefeated so far, right, this year.
In
LA.
I can't think of a loss.
Yeah. FC Dallas went and put the hurt on the Galaxy. Houston went and put the hurt on the Galaxy, and Austin FC just came back from beating LAFC. So, we think that the Californians are taking over Texas, but bringing it back the other way.
Maybe vice versa. Let's talk about the team that, Victor, you said, well, Houston could be at the top of the West if they had done a few more things right. Austin FC could have been at the top of the West if they had won against Orlando City, Chris, but it wasn't meant to be. This was a weird game.
It was a very weird game. I put in my takeaways.
Help me make sense of this.
So I'm working on my takeaways. They'll be up shortly after we get off this podcast. But it was 6th Street Bachelor Party meets Florida Man. It was it was wild. It was wild. I'm trying to make sense of it myself, but it was one of those matches that Austin made a poor mistake at the beginning. Brad Stuver put his hand up, said, "Hey, I messed this up, and allow me this one, guys, on a PGA Championship Sunday." He called a flop shot. He went for the flop shot, and he just hit the middle of the ball instead of the bottom of the ball. And it's just a simple play. You just gotta pull out
what this means. I don't
pull out the you just gotta pull out the 9-iron. You're on the fringe, man. Pull out the putter.
Right.
Just get it done. It was a simple play that he tried to make difficult. He's trying to chip over Junior Urso, and it lands right at Urso's feet, and puts him in a bad spot, in a bad way, and it's 1-0. I think 70 seconds into this one, and then Austin FC. I think what we've seen from them when they're chasing games is, man, they love to take risks, and when you do that, when you leave yourself open, you're always in danger of giving up the second one, and that's what happened. Huan, I think, proved to me, first time seeing him in person, I think he might be the best fullback in this league. Just really, really good player, very, very quick. And John Gallagher had trouble dealing with him. They put John Gallagher back there because of his speed, but Huan's just a smart player. He picked those moments, and he scores the second goal. And then you're thinking, oh boy, this could get out of hand. I think Orlando City, as easy as it could have been 1-1 or 2-2 at some points in the first half, it also could have been 5 or 6-0 at halftime. There were some chances. Brad Stuber makes a nice save, I think, at the beginning of the second half, and then things just go off the rails. I mean, it was a classic MLS After Dark scenario. Rodrigo Schlegel picks up a yellow card for sticking his arm out on a shot, leads to a free kick, and then it hits him on the arm on the second go around on Sebastian Drusi's free kick, and red card comes out. It's 11v10, and it's a penalty kick. Drusi converts, and then after that, about 10 minutes after that, so it's 2-1, and then Cesar Araujo just loses his head. And Alex Ring, I think, put it pretty much the same as the refs, but a little more detailed. He said he kicked me in the jewels. He reached out, gave a little tap, and that was all she wrote. And also Alex Ring, I didn't realize this was Araujo, but there was a moment in the first half when Sebastian Drusi took a shot down below as well, and I think that was the refs were on the lookout for that move from Araujo. 21-year-old, he's got to learn to do better, especially with his team already down to 10. They go down to 9, and guys, I think that Austin feels they should have won this game, which is hilarious given the way it started. But they might be right. They had 20 minutes to chase this thing against 9 men, and Musajite finally finds the equalizer, but it finishes 2-2, and probably the fair result. But man, this was MLS as MLS gets.
Yeah, I think it had a little bit of Liga MX flair with some of the red cards, with the back and forth, looking maybe more like an NBA game than a traditional soccer match. I think there was a little bit of that. In the first half when the teams were still 11v11, Chris, I felt like Orlando was dominating the midfield battle, which could be something I feel like could be for, a sign for concern. We've talked about how good Danny Pereira has been. You've been talking about it since literally he showed up in Texas. But this game, I think Orlando recognized that. They kind of took him seriously and made life difficult for him and Ring. And it was tough in the first half to go through the middle, and yet Austin didn't really seem to have other ideas.
I wonder if they can maybe take a lesson from that LAFC match, because in that one, Alex Ring dropped deeper. They played a double pivot with him and Valencia. And I know that they've been entrusting that defensive midfield position to Danny Pereira, and he's done really well. I thought he played pretty well in this game, even 97% of his passes.
I didn't say he was bad. I just feel like they made.
I just think he could use a little help, right? Against
exactly. I think they said, okay, you beat us by yourself. We're gonna make you do what you do, but we're also gonna take you seriously. We're gonna recognize that you're a player who this team sometimes flows through, and good luck, and kind of clog that middle there. And I thought it was pretty successful.
I think that's the spot that Austin FC's in general. They're kind of feeling their oats. They're feeling themselves a little bit, and they're taking risks. And that's the Josh Wolf game that I think that you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And they're doing both right now. They're having some really, really good moments, and they're having some moments. They are. They're just they're cutting off both their legs at the beginning of the match and then sewing them back on, getting it figured out. So,
I guess with the golf metaphors, man.
Maybe we'll just cut out the metaphors in general. Maybe
sounds like Austin FC's doing that at the start of every game. No, I agree with you. I think there is a confidence there that certainly didn't exist last year, that maybe didn't even exist at the start of the season, that's building. And yet we do see Austin FC making life difficult for themselves sometimes. And sometimes I think being a little slow to adjust makes it sound like I'm saying that Josh Wolf needs to do something different. I'm not trying to go there. I just think the team needs to have and develop, and maybe it just comes with time, sort of a not even a plan B, just get a little more creative, make more modifications, be a little less regimented, and be unafraid to sort of modify if the game plan isn't going as they want it to.
Well, I think, to be fair, John, I think they have learned to do that a little bit better. They've got a little bit of a change up. They played, against LAFC and even Real Salt Lake for stretches. They played sort of this more ugly game, and I think that they've learned to do that a little bit better. But I think in this one and at home, I was looking, and I think they were looking as well. I was looking for a beautiful, just get out in the front foot and take it to them. And you give up a goal in the first 70 seconds, and I think it just kind of messes with your head a little bit when your whole plan is to get out on the front foot and have this beautiful game, get back to playing Q2 ball that I think they've been so good at. And now it's been 2 home matches in a row that they sort of played sloppy. And they won't be at home again until FC Dallas comes to town on June 25th. So they got plenty of time to figure out what that home game looks like. And I think that it's a good sign that they're learning to win a little bit ugly, as they've got to go on the road for the next month as well.
Gabrielson comes out minute 20, replaced by Kip Keller. Are the locker rooms back open for Austin as well? I don't know if you're able to kind of like work.
They are. Ruben wasn't back there, but a quick update on him if you didn't see it from my reporting. He was sick. He had a stomach bug that kind of crept up on him. He said Josh Wolf said around the national anthem, he started to feel it. And then, 15 minutes in, he was, I'm not sure if he lost it on the field, but certainly on his way back to the locker room.
Let's not review the footage. I don't want to see I appreciate your reporting, but I don't necessarily want you to do a frame by frame if that's what happened. But
the good news is nothing to worry about physically as far as like anything that goes. You just got to get that stomach right, and I think he will by Sunday. So nothing to worry about there.
Yeah, definitely. The defense, I think like the early gaff makes it a little difficult to analyze. Hey, how did the defense do? That's something we've been talking about this year as a potential area of improvement. The attack has been so good, has connected so well. The defense, sometimes has risen to the occasion, sometimes has struggled. I know it's tough to evaluate when you have that goal that you mentioned that sort of changes the entire maybe game plan in general. But I do think that, even last year, I don't want to keep going back to 2021. I don't think anyone does if you're a fan of Texas MLS teams. But, even the fact that Keller comes off the bench and puts in a shift, and sure, they get scored on right after he comes in. But after that, they're able to keep no more goals from going and give the attack a chance to come back and potentially win the game, which they aren't able to do, but get the point, which is still something. FC Dallas didn't do it. I think speaks to the fact that there is some defensive depth growing in Austin.
There is, for sure, and I thought it was telling as well how high they think of Kip Keller, that as they were chasing that winning goal at 2-2, Julio Cascante was the one they sent forward and left Kip Keller to sort of, hey, you're good enough, just deal with this in the back. And thankfully, there weren't too many moments that he had to deal with anything. But man, Julio Cascante was looking like I equated it to here we go with the metaphors. But there was a kid at my high school that was a defensive lineman and the kicker on kickoffs, so he would take the kickoff and lead the wedge, and he got
the wedge. Oh my gosh, Ohio, jeez.
Yes. so he would leave. He got it right like 2 times over his entire career, but when he did, it was some of the biggest hits in football I've ever seen in my life. And Julio Cascante was giving off those vibes as he was like dancing across the line, waiting for the kickoff after it was 2-2. Anyway.
That's a Costa Rican thing, man, because Kendall Waston, the former MLS center back, he was like basically Costa Rica had some really bad games at the start of World Cup qualification. He's a center back, big dude, but like sometimes they were just like, I guess we'll have him play forward, and it would work. Like he would score.
And Francisco Calvo as well.
I mean, he loves, that guy loves to get forward, but like for sure. With Waston, it was like on purpose. With Calvo, I think it's like, I'm just gonna go. But no, I think seems like the Costa Rican center backs, they're center backs in body and mind, but forwards at heart. So that's always
before we move on to Dallas, quick shouts to Musa Musajite hadn't been seen in the lineup since March. Lots of questions in my mentions over the last few months about how he's doing. Ramadan was a thing, but I think he also just found himself on the depth chart behind Danny Hosen and obviously Maxi Urruti has had a really good start to the year, and he gets in this one, scores a goal, and hopefully that does something for his confidence. And we'll see if we get to talk to him soon about sort of what's been going on with him. But look for that in the near future, I hope.
Who's the best? Who's got the best ceiling out of those three guys? Just kind of quick.
The best ceiling?
Yeah, those three guys.
I thought you were asking Kendall Wast and Julio Cascante or Francisco Calvo as attackers. Yeah, no, who's the best forward for Austin FC going forward? I mean, is it Maxi's job?
I think it's Maxi, and I think that the thing is, like with Maxi and Danny Hosen, I think we kind of know what they are in this league at this point. And
that's true.
With Musajita, he's still a question mark. I think maybe his ceiling might be higher, but he's a long way from reaching it. Not necessarily a bad way. I mean, the kid's 22, and he still doesn't speak. I don't think he speaks English or Spanish, so it's been hard for him to kind of get going and kind of work his way into this group. And I think Maxi Urruti put it well. He said, he's a great kid. I love him. I'm glad I got to play with him, and I'm glad he scored. So I think that he's certainly like a beloved figure behind the scenes, but maybe not like the world beater that maybe he was expected to be. And I think that was a little bit unfair. I think it was like the fact was there was no striker at all, and Musajite comes in. He's this big imposing figure. He's able to hold the ball up, but he's still this was his second goal, guys. Like,
yeah, I don't,
maybe lower the expectations on Musajite a little bit.
I don't know if it's because of the fervor and enthusiasm around the Austin fan base. I don't know if it's because Austin FC as a club does present things in a very slick way. I don't know if it's because so many of these signings are like these long anticipated, like, oh, wow, the first signing is here. Oh, we finally got a forward that'll help us. We finally got a center back that will help us. I think there is like, Gabrielson is another one where I keep coming back to where I'm like, man, could be a good MLS center back. I don't think he's going to be the answer for Austin FC's defense. Obviously
he's been good. He's been good, man. But
he hasn't been
the
great.
Last few games,
he hasn't been great.
He's starting to kind of. I mean, did you see the finish against LAFC? He's starting to kind of.
His job is not to finish. His job is not to finish.
We just talked about all the Costa Rican center backs. Let the Norwegian do it too.
Hey, you're welcome to throw that in as an additional part of your game. Your job is to stop teams from scoring goals, something that Austin FC has done sometimes this year, but not always. Let's talk a little bit about FC Dallas, the team that's won most of the year, but not always. They suffer their first consecutive defeats. They lost midweek to Vancouver Whitecaps in the game that they felt they should win, and they lose 2-1 to Minnesota United on Sunday at home, their first home defeat of the year, and a game they felt they should win. And the numbers kind of back up that vibe, guys, because you look at the possession, FC Dallas almost at 70-30. I think it ended up being 68% for FC Dallas. The shots, 19-7. On target is where Minnesota United made its business, did its positive things, because on target, I think Minnesota had 6, all but one of their shots were on target, whereas FCD had 3 of their 19 on target. Simply not good enough. Paul Arriola continues his hot streak, 4 goals in 4 games, an unbelievable addition for FC Dallas this year. Alan Velasco, I saw him in the locker room after. We chatted off the record a little bit, not like I can share this information. He's going to be back in training on Monday. So that's something I think could help FC Dallas get, kind of boost their attack, because he's coming back from COVID-19. He'll be returning to training this week. The other 2 guys who had COVID, Martin Pais and Jose Martinez, start this game. But we saw FC Dallas rest some players. They've had a brutal stretch, to be honest. They go to Kansas City to play the Cup. They lose that game in extra time, so already some more minutes on guys' legs than you might like. Then they go to LA, win that game in LA, go straight to Vancouver, lose that game in Vancouver, and finally come home. So we saw guys like Jesus Ferreira come in as a substitute. Matt Hedges stays the entire night on the bench. I do think there was some fatigue that was a factor for FC Dallas. But the other factor was that FC Dallas concedes 2 goals on set pieces. And this year, set pieces have really not been an issue for FCD. The only one that they conceded, Bills, before this was that Douglas Costa goal in LA when they were already winning 3-0. And I talked to some of the guys about that set piece issue, that last night, you give Emmanuel Reynoso the opportunity to set up for a set piece. He can hit him. The rebound ends up coming that Robin Lod finishes off. He beat FC Dallas last year in a game against Minnesota United. And then the second one, it was weird. DJ Taylor with his first ever MLS goal, but still not good enough defending those set pieces. And I think FC Dallas feels like, we switched off in moments we can't switch off in. The good news is, I think, Chris, you can correct those things during the week, but ultimately a disappointment for FC Dallas fans after how well the team has been playing.
Yeah, it's the fine margins, and I think it's just sort of similar to how Austin's feeling after this one. Is that you're near the top of the table, and all of a sudden the expectations around these games are you got to get the 3 points at home. There's no excuses, and I think that it's good that I think that both of these teams are sort of saying that to us, saying in the press conferences, and I think they feel that they should be better than where they are, and where they are is frankly better than we thought they'd be. So I think that like the expectations just continue to get higher and higher for these teams, and I just wonder, when we get to August and September, those expectations going to be reality, or are things going to sort of fall back to the mean? Like you might look at, I think from a national perspective, you might look at these two matches and sort of feel that way, that these are two teams kind of coming back to earth a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's weird to sort of frame this game and even the Vancouver one because it's totally fine to lose a game on the road. It's even fine to lose a game at home. Last year I think New England won the Supporters Shield with 7 losses, maybe 8, and they set a record for most points ever accumulated in MLS. That's not really the target for any of these 3 Texas MLS teams this year. But Victor, I was having a little trouble framing this game because on the one hand, as Chris mentions, you have to get 3 points at home. Everyone knows that's the formula of MLS. But on the other hand, like they did kind of what they needed to do. It just didn't fall the right way, and it seems like the mistakes they made can be corrected. So, as the writer, just like behind the scenes, I'm like, man, like I'm not gonna rip this team, but also I can't be like, it's fine, everything's fine, because they should have gotten 3 points in this game. As Chris mentions, that's different from last year, but it is a balance, right, between when these teams can drop points, when they can celebrate, getting results on the road like Houston did. It seems like all 3 teams are still, we are still, even though we're 13 games in, figuring out just where the ceiling is for these teams.
Yeah, and how much are they dependent on Velasco to reach their best potential? I think having a player that can possess the ball. I mean, because he's been, I think, the key absence in these last couple of games.
Maybe, but I think like they also still need him on the field to work on what he's doing, because I think he's in some games he's playing a different game than the rest of the attack, which is bad. Like I think he does things in a different way, which if everyone else was doing it in the same way would be good. But there are times he kind of ends up on an island because he's trying to put his head down and dribble, or trying to be in a place where he feels like is correct, and maybe other teammates don't necessarily. I think that time with Velasco is important, and that's something that FC Dallas loses in these games. And I agree with you that they would have been a better team, especially if you can bring him off the bench. But ultimately, I do wonder. I think that that's something they're going to have to keep working on, because he's clearly a talent, clearly can do exceptional things. But he also needs to work with Paul Arriola and Jesus Ferreira. Ferreira, let's not forget, leads the league in goals, and Arriola has scored 4 goals in the last 4 games. So these other guys are also top tier players, right? There's not the record signing for the team. So, Franco Jara comes in, fine showing to some extent, but I talked to him after the game. He's obviously disappointed. He missed a number of chances, and these are chances you don't get back necessarily. And Jara needs those goals. He's the top paid player. He gets a rare start, and he can't make it happen. So I think there should be some frustration now, not as much as the fan that was trying to pick a fight with him after the game. I talked to a few people in the locker room that said that guy was definitely across the line. I'm not sure what's going on there. That was strange.
No, but a big part of it too is because obviously Dallas, I mean, their high-powered offense, I think, is their biggest asset, right? Even like you're right. I mean, they shouldn't be losing on set pieces, and especially a team like Minnesota. I think there was very few ways we could have predicted them to win. This may be one of the better attributes they have. Maybe you're right. Maybe they just kind of dropped the ball on that one. But yeah, just as far as sometimes maybe I don't know. You would know a little more than I do on this. How much other games have been playing with a lead and managing that out, right? And because that also helps to manage out a game.
What's been strange about FCD is that I think they seem to. They haven't played the same game twice, I would say. You've seen some patterns emerge where, for a while, Nico Estevez and his staff were making these changes that were working, and they were falling behind, and then they were rallying. And then all of a sudden they were getting early goals and feeling themselves, and then either protecting the lead or sometimes feeling it crumble. in Sporting Kansas City twice, once in the league and once in the cup. It goes from a win to a draw. In the cup, it goes from a win to it goes from a win to draw in the league, and goes to win to a loss in the cup. And then, like against LA, they take this enormous lead early, the fastest they'd scored 3 goals from kickoff since 2006. And then they're just protecting the lead and seeing it out. Against Vancouver, they get an early lead, but not that early. It's just before the half, and then they're trying to protect the game and see it out. So it's been weird because we haven't really seen, I would say, a pattern emerge enough to be like, oh, FC Dallas collapses late, or oh, FC Dallas takes leads and then tries to protect them. It hasn't really been that cut and dried. So I think that's going to be something interesting to watch as this team evolves. I also think, like I said, they're ready for that international break. I don't know if they're going to tell you that, but I feel like the added trip to Kansas City, the double road trip that they spent going very far distances on the West Coast, I think has affected them more than the other Texas teams and most of the other teams around the league. You saw it with Ferreira being rested. You saw it with Hedges being rested. Some other guys also getting a break. They are ready, I think, to go to Orlando. They hope get a win and then have a few weeks where they can fine tune. Where is Velasquez supposed to be? How is the defense supposed to defend when Matt Hedges is out? How can we clean up the set pieces and make sure there are no rebounds? I think that's going to be big. And I think, it was only 3 guys, but the COVID absences hit 3 very important players: your starting goalkeeper, a starting center back, and your DP winger who's been starting every game. So I think they're going to be able to bounce back from that. All that said, they're still sitting 4th in the Supporters Shield race and 3rd in the West. You would have taken that before the season at this point, 100%. So contextualize FC Dallas how you want. Hopefully you agree with what I write on the Striker Texas. My takeaway is already up, talking about the set piece goals, talking about Paxton Pomykal wearing the armband, and talking about Jesus Ferreira not only coming into the game as a substitute, but doing so sort of in the role that looked like the one he played last year, not as a 9 and not necessarily next to Franco Jara, a little bit of a playmaker role, trying to get between the lines from Ferreira. I talked to Nico Esteves and Franco Jara about how that worked out or didn't. We're over time, but let's quickly hit the best thing we ate. We've all been traveling a little bit. Victor, in LA, good breakfast?
I'm trying to still figure out the best thing I ate. I have 3 road games this week, so I'll get something on the way out, and then I'll owe it to you next week.
Wow, a debt best thing. You're drinking a coffee right now, a hotel coffee. Is that not good?
Hotel coffee, yeah.
All right, that's Victor's direct. Chris?
Yeah, I was when I got into LA. I was in Koreatown. I actually ended up finding a little Argentine spot, so had a little bit of the taste of Sebastian Driussi and Maxi Ruti there.
I really like the show that they do with Fagundes as well, the Mate con Vos, where they just sit there and take questions and drink mate. I really like that show. If you speak Spanish,
shout out
to. Are they subtitled it or no?
No, they don't. I was saying that the entire city of Austin is going to learn to speak Spanish in an Argentine accent. It's going to be great.
That's true. Yeah, you're going to get your second language speakers tossing in a bunch of shays, and that'll be something to behold for sure. I would love that. I would love, and I've shouted out the Buenos Aires Cafe in Austin before, over in East Austin. If you want some Argentine food and you're chilling at home, man, that's a good spot. They took care of us when I was down for a friend's bachelor party. So shout out to those guys. The folks over there. I will have to go with, I'm going to cheat as well because none of you guys are really sticking with the rule. I guess Chris did, sorry. But in LA, I was there too for the FC Dallas and LA Galaxy game. And I went to House of Football, which is the vintage shirt pop-up. And they have a bar downstairs. And I talked to a lot of the crew there. And man, it's a really cool space for football lovers. They had the LAFC game going when I was there, but they open up at ungodly hours on the West Coast. If you're out there for a road trip, as I think all 3 Texas MLS teams will be here in the near future, you want to watch a game, make the pilgrimage. It's worth it. The shirts up there are awesome. They got a Hugo Sanchez Dallas Burn jersey. Oof.
Oh.
Yeah, if I had, if I had a little more spending money, I might have had to toss to get that one. But if you're a fan of Austin, not any throwback jerseys, but if you're a fan of Houston, there's some throwback gear. There's some Liga MX throwback gear. Great selection of, the Fiorentina Nintendo shirt, the Liverpool, golden era shirts. It's all there. That's upstairs. You go downstairs to the bar. The guy that runs the bar, or at least that was tending bar, also runs like a cheat sheet for which games to watch. because he's got every single TV in that place on a different game that matters. He's got the Argentine League rolling. He had League One championship rolling. This is a spot that really loves the game. And I think in the U.S., we still have to support those places. We still have to put our dollars in those places because we all know how fragile it can be. There's been some other great soccer spaces in the U.S. that I've loved, that I've visited, that have closed. So hopefully House of Football out in L.A. in the Highland Park neighborhood make it out there if you make it to L.A. And of course, if you're into supporting this game in your local communities, you can also subscribe to us at the Striker Texas. It's only a couple bucks a month. We got a 30-day free trial. If you want to get the best coverage of FC Dallas, of Austin FC, of the Houston Dynamo, of the Houston Dash, of the U.S. national team when they come to town, of Mexico national team when they come to town, of Bayer Leverkusen when they tour Mexico, and there's a parallel with FC Dallas. You can find that all on the Striker Texas. We hope you check it out and join us. Chris, you had a thought. You wanted to do some promotion?
No, I was just gonna say, like, with locker rooms being open now too, it's like the coverage, at least for me, I think it's been really eye-opening not having that access with this particular club, over its history. Just how much more we're going to be able to do, especially on the road, being the only reporter, being able to stand there while Danny Pereira dishes up his Chipotle and pulling him aside for just a minute. I was told I can't be giving out people's Chipotle orders. It's too private, but everything else is pretty much on the table.
Yeah. No, it is a game changer. It is absolutely a game changer. Something that, I used to know the FC
Does
Dallas.
he put queso on his bowl or what? I mean,
he can't.
I don't know. I think that was actually. Yeah, I can't say. It's all of them are too. They just can't have people have you knowing what's on their Chipotle.
Christian Pulisic put his bowl out public, and then he rightfully got dunked on. That's a boring bowl, Pulisic. Put a salsa on there, man. If you're a Texan, you would put some salsa on there, I'm sure. But anyway, more Chipotle Bowl reporting, more quotes from the locker room. And the thing that it does allow us to do is you can talk to like 6-7 guys, really get a picture of what happened on the field, and again, bring something different that no other media outlet is going to bring, because frankly, we're the only ones that are traveling for these teams. And sometimes even in the home locker room, there's 1 or 2 other great guys, good reporters. We like their stuff too. But a lot of times it's limited, the scope of what they can do. So we do hope you'll support that work on the Striker Texas. We're way over time, but talk to us next week. Probably not. It's Memorial Day. I'm not going to be here. Maybe Chris and Victor will have a special again. But stay tuned to the channel. Stay tuned to the Striker Texas. We got you covered over there. Talk to you soon on the Striker Texas MLS podcast.